That's a good question. Why hasn't this time period not been covered officially? Well, nobody else is gonna. Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, sometimes on this channel, we like to have ourselves a little bit of a journey, a self-discovery, looking into things about this franchise that didn't really get much time to be explored, or any time to be explored since they were often overlooked. One of these instances that came to mind was the time period after the first Dragon Ball series had concluded, and right before Dragon Ball Z began, opening the door to space travel. Saiyans, power levels, screaming at the top of your lungs, making a fool out of yourself sometimes. Well, you get the idea, modern Dragon Ball as we know it. What we also like to do on this channel is make up new bad guys. The saga of inventing new villains for Goku to fight against isn't done yet. Last time out, we were figuring out how to fill out the original Dragon Ball with some additional enemies for our heroes to vanquish. You know, make use of the world that the characters exist in already, and be more resourceful with the source material that we had. Do check the link up top to find out what we got up to. If you've watched it already, don't you folks think that it's the right time here and now to go and have a look at Dragon Ball Z and see what we can do there? Wrong! Wait, Masako, you said last time that we go into Dragon Ball Z right now, what gives? Well, because you see, we have a period of time that is largely unexplored. A period of time where we could add an adventure or two for Goku to participate in. It's a bigger time gap than you think. There are plenty of opportunities to have stories and adventures for Goku to have, as well as his new family to find himself in, away from the main Dragon team. And all of this takes place between the ages of 757 and 761. The 4 or 5 years of peace, when Chi-Chi and Goku are busy raising Gohan, the time skip between original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. And whilst the original timeline grants rest for our power couple, I don't think it actually was as leisurely as the main timeline would like to lead us to believe. There must have been something going on here. Surely, in that time frame between the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament and the beginning of Raditz's entrance into the story, blowing everything up into what we got, that there surely would have been some instances of action for the hero of Earth. So, Haverock and I sat down and discussed what possibilities could happen within this 4 or 5 year period. We ultimately thought it would be rather neat to grant them an adventure in that period that would include both of them, husband and wife, working together, serving as a rather nice introduction to the tropes that would become second nature in Z, and something that we did dabble a little bit in the King Piccolo saga, as a sign of things to come. But to them, it'd be a rather fascinating interlude that would have no lasting ramifications whatsoever. No, none at all. Either way, all of this would be a rather nice alternative to the Dead Zone movie, am I right? Okay, that's a fair point to make. But what can we do? How can you top the conclusion of Dragon Ball, which is a classic, and yet not overstep the boundaries set in Dragon Ball Z too early? I mean, I get your point. Goku had just defeated a Demon King's heir after squaring off with his father before that, and then he took on a whole army of baddies, as well as having some comedic encounters with the Pilaf gang, so he's already been through a lot. On the other side of this though, long into the future, we have more spacey adventures waiting for him in the form of other Saiyans, so we don't want to take off the sheen of that yet. So what can we do that doesn't seem a bit of a mismatch or an anomalous encounter? Do we indeed resort to introducing the space element earlier? Just do it now? But how? Do we resort to Jarko? Not so fast. We don't need the Galactic Patrol here. We have an idea that could satisfy all of you out there. So, if you do like it, drop a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you. There is an idea of a group that observes important fighting events across the universe to keep in check where the trend of power and strength is going across mortal space. And something on this planet has caught their eye: the 23rd tournament. Something about that contest piqued their computer's algorithms, being somewhat more impactful than its previous outing, the 22nd, which to them was barely a blip. So when the ship gets to Earth to look for the two finalists and their immense display of power and skill, they were pretty disappointed to find out that neither Goku or Piccolo were anywhere to be seen. To them, they had gone underground. That was weird. Usually fighters like this from tournaments would be lauding up their newfound fame and be easy to spot. This was meant to be a contest of an international scale that brought the world together in one place. After this, these two should have been household names. Albeit with Piccolo for more nefarious and fearful reasons, but still, you wouldn't have forgotten about them, right? So, our spatial fixers sent out their couriers Rack and Pinion to look for Goku, Piccolo and Chi-Chi across the planet and to bring them to them. The organization itself is called Mediani Galactic, and basically, it's a space pit fighter circle as well as a media conglomerate. Think of a certain wrestling thing with a person you can't always see, and their time is now. Yeah, you know where we're going. They gained their fame and money from organizing various kinds of almost gladiatorial fights across the universe. Naturally, their algorithm had deduced that Earth would be perfect for upcoming combatants that were less obvious from the traditional crop of fighters that they had in their roster already. This part of space had been relatively untapped thanks to its backwards ways, but now it was starting to yield some rather interesting anomalies, which Mediani Corporation really wanted to milk first and foremost. Obviously, Rack and Pinion would be too weak on their own to grab these three capable fighters by force alone, and Goku and Piccolo, who would still be kinda hostile with each other, would still deal with them easily, seeing them as threats to the planet, with little chance for these two to try and explain themselves for being on Earth in the first place. That and they're aliens, they have to explain that too. However, they do have one thing that these Earthlings don't have, not even Capsule Corp has these: superior tech. They have technology on their side, obviously. And when cornered, they would resort to using their stun guns to bring them back with little resistance. But ideally, they really didn't want to do that, as that makes their fighters very cranky in the pit later, less likely to take orders or being a good sport. It was really difficult, but still, it was an option. And as for their designs, we would go for a hyena-like being for Rack, almost like a knoll, which wearing some vibrant colours like green or pink for a contrast to make them stand out from what you would normally see or expect in this time period for Dragon Ball. Pinion, on the other hand, would be something more cybernetic, kind of something that resembles Cacao from the Tree of Might movie, only this time more crab-like and less imposing. After all, they're here to encourage people to work with them, not scare them away, something that Pinion is very much aware of, and he's trying his very best to come across as less threatening on first contact. Sure enough, when they encounter Goku and Chi-Chi, they are met with resistance. Goku, though, is sort of curious about the idea, but Chi-Chi is adamant that that life was behind her, and that they have a young boy to look after in the form of Gohan, who is in the back room, sleeping at that time with his grandpa Ox, also fast asleep in a nearby rocking chair. Rack sighs and resorts to knocking them out with the stun gun. The boss was very clear, though, that he wanted this trio by any means necessary. So, after stunning and containing the three heroes, Piccolo being particularly tricky to take down, the two minions would report to their immediate higher-up, Multa. Multa is quite the powerful figure. She is a taskmaster for Mediani, and would be responsible for the relocation of assets, warriors, on the planet of Eshur, where some of the pit fighting takes place. Multa has her eyes on the prize a lot of the time, being the cause of Mediani's current great wealth and powerful roster. She knows a good combatant when she sees one, and when she sets her eyes on somebody, they usually comply. And only a couple of times in their history has their target met with a less than fortunate resolution. Oh well, there'll always be other fighters, she thought. She can give the paperwork for the failure to her lackeys anyway. I mean, what are they gonna do? Say no? Of course, when the trio would come to find out what they're doing here on this ship, Goku would be very conflicted. Sure, he loved him some fighting, but someone has taken away his freedom and is going to use him as a means of entertainment for some rich folks? Ugh. This kind of took the luster off of that prospect of meeting other powerful fighters from space. Yes, it was already a revelation that space was a thing, but that was lost on him when Chi-Chi was lamenting her being taken away from her baby boy. And not only that, but her father, the poor Ox King, had to be the one to take care of Gohan solely, which maybe you could see as a little montage for some comedy relief at this time of uncertainty, of him trying his best and hoping that Goku and Chi-Chi would be alright, take care, and save themselves. I mean, can you imagine his shock when he woke up to see Gohan's parents were gone? Oh, that's bad. Additionally, throughout all of this, being in one containment cell for the journey to Eshur, Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo would have the looming suspicion that they would have to work together to get out of this one in one piece. Piccolo is disgusted by this, hating the idea of having to play nice with not only Goku, but his wife as well. Chi-Chi scowled too at Piccolo. She was not keen either. She knew how much pain he and his father had caused over the last few years. She herself vowed to ensure that he would never try anything funny on her husband ever again. Goku, however, was more curious as to how Piccolo had been training since they had last met in the arena. They did vow to fight again one day, but Piccolo wasn't thinking that. He was more confused as to how Goku wasn't scared being in the same room as himself. Was he not intimidated by the great son of King Piccolo? The demon, though, not realizing Goku's constant passion for fighting, though, that's a big maybe. As further assurance that this trio would play by the rules, and punishment for resisting earlier, they would have special collars put on their necks that would shock them if they showed any semblance or kind of disrespect toward their overlords. Mota would laugh and sigh. That's what you get for resisting. You should have just said yes when we found you. Then, we might not have had the need for that rather animalistic resort. Piccolo cursed her out, which led to him being made an example. See? Shocking behavior. Since we mentioned her just now, let's return to Mota for a second and talk about her design, since we haven't really covered that yet. She oversees the lesser minions and is quite the capable warrior herself. Herself a former multi-time champion, now a fixer for the company. Yeah, think Triple H, what he does nowadays. We would give her an avian-like appearance, almost like a female version of Ganos' true form, but based this time more of a shoebill stalk design rather than your typical eagle or buzzard. She would be quite well built and be incredibly tough towards the gladiators, but agile like a bird. Now having though retired mostly from combat, she usually sports a business suit, like most wrestling executives. But her muscles and figure would be straining to escape, and an everlasting reminder that one day she was one of the strongest fighters going. Her great prowess in the ring was still there. Put simply, Brickbird. She would be also the one to train the teams before a show, trying to muster the best performances out of them to make the crowd happy. She liked the ones that worked with her. If you want a comparison, think like someone like Gordon Ramsay when he warms to someone trying their best. She could show genuine support and pride in those kinds of people, but they were sadly few and far between. Most of the fighters were meatheads or total jerks or cowards. Of course, Piccolo would try to constantly break free from her control, only to be painfully reminded that the shock collars were a thing. Many times. For Mota, this would end up being rather funny. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, managed to become somewhat of a social chameleon. She would gain some respect from the alien, but she would not be soft with her still. Since she was rolling with her plan, Mota was relieved that at least one of them was playing nice. As for Goku, he was a little weird, a little too enthusiastic for her liking. They would then learn that the whole thing was coordinated by her boss, Drolik Mediani, who was a powerful media mogul, capturing fighters from across known space for views, fame, and riches. Although quite formidable himself, Drolik is protected by his bodyguard by the name of Arch. Apparently, she was even stronger than her boss. We would see only their silhouettes at first, though showing Drolik as a rather largely built individual, and Arch being pretty tall and lean. So after the first few battles that Earth's team would have in the ring, they would work in their favour, them being able to do well against other competitors. They would beat some generic nameless aliens, gaining the respect of the audience. Clearly, these Earthlings were rather spirited newcomers. Piccolo and Goku would assume that if they beat everybody they saw, they would eventually be set free and they can go home again. But Mota would reveal to Chi-Chi, thanks to them getting along, that Drolik never gets rid of his strongest warriors. Some have been around for decades. You either go down fighting, or at best you become his minion. That's how she got there. She would reveal at this point in the story that she has a cuff on her leg herself. This one's slightly different to the collar and what tricks that has. This cuff allows Drolik to have a certain amount of mind control over her. It's still better than the collar, but not by much. Chi-Chi, using this information, would reason with Piccolo and Goku that the best course of action would be to turn the gladiators against Drolik themselves, and that they might try and sway Mota onto their side so she can escape with them. Mota originally scoffs them from this idea and fights them, but after she's defeated, she notes that it was her way to test their strength. They had passed with flying colours. You got yourself a wonderful gal, Goku. Goku laughs and praises Chi-Chi's power. The bird lady then decides to help them against Drolik, but it won't be an easy feat. They need to find a way to disable the collars first of all. They don't have a way to do that yet, and their time is short, because here comes another fight. This time, they will have to fight one of Drolik's favourites, Horn, who is a massive yellow rhinoceros-like being, with natural armour plates on his body. The fight is tough for our heroes, but they manage to take Horn down eventually. After their opponent is beaten, Piccolo then gets an idea, since everyone is watching them, and attempts to rip off his own collar. Drolik, who's looking from his shadowy lounge, is puzzled by this, and is wondering why no one's pressing the button to make him stop. But he's quite intrigued though, not worrying about what happens. If it went too far, he could always shock him into submission. It's not possible that this green man would survive the collar, right? But Piccolo, however, despite tapping the button to make it shocking, by the power of regeneration and will, he's able to literally burn the collar off through the power of sheer will. Though, of course, he is heavily damaged in the process. But in the end, this does allow him to break free and break Goku and Chi-Chi's collars as well, who in turn can now free other gladiators and Mota. The other gladiators, seeing that the collars can be broken after all, eagerly join in the fray. That is until Drolik and Arch come down to take matters into their own hands. Arch is revealed to be a member of Legic's race, but with darker skin and lighter spots, while Drolik is this massive, round Zunian dressed in ornate red robes. The fight begins. Piccolo is in a rough state, so Goku and Chi-Chi have to fight both the ringleader and his bodyguard, which is a rather challenging duel. Meanwhile, Mota asks Rack and Pinion to help Piccolo, while she is also joining the effort. They are able to defeat Drolik, but Arch powers up, and seems like she's going to be a bit of a problem. In the last moment, Piccolo joins the fight, and Goku and his Namekian companion are able to defeat her with a combined Kamehameha and Hell Zone grenade. The two get captured and are overthrown. Some of the gladiators are eager to return home, while others, led by Mota, are wanting to turn this whole thing into a more respectful establishment. They destroy the media equipment and want to turn Mediani's compound into a proper fighters guild. Goku and Chi-Chi then bid them farewell, whilst Rack and Pinion drive them home, when Ox King and Gohan have fallen asleep after a full day of fun. The two hope that they would never deal with an alien threat ever again. Oh, the irony. So what did you folks think? Did you like this little story? In the next part, we are truly going to venture into Z territory and check out if there are places where we could add stuff. But leave a comment below and let's get this whole discussion going. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!